So, of course, we had already been talking about the Edmonton Oilers and their offer sheet situation. This was a pretty big deal yesterday. We had expanded on this and more in today's Cody CC Montreal Canadiens potential trade video. But in this video, I wanted to go out there and just go over the holistic view of things and how, honestly, when you take a look at some of the extra pieces of information that are coming out, all the older talking points that are being revisited, it just kind of keeps on getting worse for Edmonton. Now, starting out with the actual offer sheets themselves, we had talked about this and more yesterday, but take a look at the St. Louis Blues and what it is they had done. They signed both Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg to offer sheets, and the dollar amounts go as follows. You have Broberg at 2 years, $4.5 million a year. Dylan Holloway at 2 years, $2.29 million a year. Compensation due is a third-round pick for Holloway and a second-round pick for Philip Broberg. $1 more on the AAV for each guy, and the compensation would have been bumped up. So St. Louis really just pushed it to the max there and said, hey, we're going to give a third-round pick for Holloway and a second-round pick for Broberg. These are the dollar amounts attached to that. Now, of course, as we've been talking about this entire time, the Oilers have no cap space. They're way over the cap right now. They're going to put Kane on the LTIR. They're going to try to do everything they can to keep some of these guys around, but the bottom line is it doesn't really look like they're going to be able to do that, especially at these dollar amounts. Philip Broberg at $4.5 million is the doozy there. It's huge. And when you go over to some of the talking points that were brought up, like this one, Bob Stouffer from Oilers Now 630 Ched yesterday, he went out there and made a statement on the broadcast saying that Ken Holland, back when he was in the Edmonton organization, he was instructed back in January to extend Broberg and Holloway. And he said no. LMAO. All the replies in this tweet are going out there and talking about how it's superb of Bob Stouffer to throw Ken Holland under the bus today, but Jeff Jackson was the CEO of hockey operations in January, and I'm very sure he felt that if Broberg and Holloway needed to get done back then, it would have happened. This was a miscalculation by the organization and ownership. So while it could be easy to go out there and dunk on Ken Holland for not signing these guys earlier, you do have to take a look at what happened after Holland left the organization, who was making the decisions and who was stepping in whilst that brief little grace period was there before Stan Bowman came in. I know it's the easy path to go out there and start hating on Stan Bowman, and I'll definitely go out there and do that a few times over the next few years, but it wasn't really Stan Bowman's prerogative to go out there and immediately sign 2 RFAs after inheriting this roster, so I don't want to make it seem like it's his fault entirely. Ken Holland, though, did have the entire year to negotiate with these dudes, did not get it done. Apparently he refused in January to make those signings happen. Now, when it comes to what the Oilers' numbers were, this is a tweet from Carmen Gill that goes out there and discusses some of the latest Elliot Friedman comments on the recent 32 Thoughts podcast. And yeah, there's a 32 Thoughts podcast now, folks. There's no Jeff Merrick, it's just Friedman, and unfortunately, I feel like the product does kind of suffer a little bit because Friedman not having that conversationalist buddy to bounce off ideas with, it just kind of falls a little bit more flat. It feels more like a Sportsnet broadcast, a news broadcast, rather than a conversational podcast. But either way, Friedman says that Broberg asked for $1.8 million a year on a 2-year extension. The Oilers offered a Holloway was $1.2 million for 1 year. Couldn't the Oilers have gone a bit higher? And this is where you start to say, man, oh man, if the Oilers were able to sign Broberg to 1.8, I feel like a lot of people in Edmonton would have been super happy with that. We had said this the entire time, but Broberg played well enough to get a role in the finals. He probably should have been utilized more. He had scored points, he had showcases where even in sheltered minutes he was providing significant value. This was certainly not a guy who was going to be a total bum heading into the next few years. Like, sure, I always said that the biggest problem with Broberg was that his head could never keep up with his hands and his feet. But I'll be darned if Philip Broberg did not exhibit significant growth this previous season and especially showed off well in the Stanley Cup Playoffs and the finals. So 1.8? As the ask? Yeah, it's no wonder that Philip Broberg accepted the St. Louis Blues offer sheet that they sent him. from 1.8 to 4.5. That is incredible. And it's like, you know, the offer sheet works like he signed the deal. He will get that money. Broberg is now a $4.5 million AAV guy. The question is, though, will it be the Blues or the Oilers that pays him that money over the next 2 seasons? Do the Oilers match the offer sheet and Broberg stays in Edmonton while getting that money, or does he just yeet away to St. Louis? I think the St. Louis route is a lot more likely since the Oilers just cannot afford that. Dylan Holloway, it's a little bit different. You could debate that he probably will get retained by Edmonton at $2.2 million a year, but still, with the ask or the offer to Holloway at 1.2, he's getting an entire extra $1 million a year. That's like an entire other roster player, a depth roster player that you could add in the cost of Holloway. Now, to make things even more interesting, to end off this video, what I wanted to do was go over to a tweet made by Jim Matheson that was published earlier this morning. This goes over maybe some of the other extra details about this situation as a whole, not regarding the players, but regarding the personnel involved. Here's what Matheson said at 6 a.m. this morning. Let me join the chorus. I know Blues Doug Armstrong wants to win, but one of his best friends and his golf buddy is Ken Holland. I just don't believe he would have handcuffed Holland like this with 2 offer sheets on Broberg and Holloway if Holland was still the Oilers' GM. Now, this isn't really like a scoop, it's just kind of an opinion tossed out there by Jim Matheson, but I feel like this idea kind of snowballs into another conversation that we've been seeing a lot over the past few days here, that, hey, Stan Bowman is really not the guy that a lot of people thought should have been hired at this point. Stan Bowman has a shady history. Stan Bowman is a bad person. Stan Bowman is this. Stan Bowman is that. Stan Bowman is unlikable. And unlikable people will usually get treated harshly by those around them. We had seen a lot of people talk about retribution as well. Oh, this is payback. This is the hockey gods. This is the fate of the universe, going out there and changing the path of the Edmonton Oilers, giving them tribulations because you hired Stan Bowman. Because you committed this grave sin, now you're getting offer sheeted and you're going to be losing out on your guys for less than ideal compensation. I don't want to go all religious on anybody here, that's not the point of this video, but it is kind of an intriguing talking point to recognize that if Stan Bowman may not have been the guy hired by Edmonton, who knows about the likelihood as to whether or not these offer sheets would have been signed. Matheson's saying that if it was Ken Holland doing his thing as the Oilers GM, Doug Armstrong probably would not have stepped in and given these huge offer sheets out. Maybe because it's Stan Bowman, it's a lot easier to think about screwing over the Oilers in this way. I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about how things seem to be getting worse for Edmonton. What are your thoughts on the initial offers and prices for guys like Holloway and for Broberg? And how do you feel about the numbers going down the way they are now, where the offer sheets signed have gotten them extreme pay raises, especially Philip Broberg? Thoughts in the comment section as to how these guys are going to play in the next few years, whether or not they'll live up to their contracts, and do you think that happens with St. Louis or Edmonton? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.